Okay, the Edge of Destruction. Here we go. The third story. I just elbowed a fucking pot of Halloween candy. For the third story outing of the entire show, they decided to switch things up a little and try something that would become familiar territory as the show went on. Stephen Moffat once said that every episode of Doctor Who is an experiment, and it's quite nice to see that the same was true even back in the early days. It could have potentially been quite risky to stray from the already established format and try something a lot darker and a lot more self-contained. Will that risk pay off or not? Let's find out as we go tumbling helplessly towards the Edge of Destruction. Following on from the last episode's dramatic cliffhanger, an explosion has rocked the TARDIS and its crew, leaving the Doctor, Susan, Ian and Barbara unconscious. Gradually, one by one, they start to come around, but they're all suffering from a pretty intense case of the old amnesia. The Doctor, however, is still unconscious, lying injured on the TARDIS floor. Susan goes off to get some supplies, and the gang are acting a bit weird.
He's rambling.
He's rambling. I love there's a specific milk button on that device. It really is just a tea-making facility, isn't it? It can make any food you could imagine. And tea. Lots of tea. Susan sees the TARDIS door is open and jumps to the conclusion that something has got inside the ship. Oh, it is a bit spooky in it. It's like the Dalek one. They build suspense and like horror so well. Some of the best Doctor Who moments are when you can't really see the enemy. There are quite a few times while watching this where I found myself reminded of the Series 4 episode Midnight, which is one of my favourites. A little research informed me that the circumstances of the making of both stories were quite similar, in that they were last-minute additions that required a very low budget and simple planning. Sometimes, especially with this show, having these constraints can lead to some really interesting stuff, the Edge of Destruction being no exception. The whole of this two-parter takes place inside the TARDIS, and for the most part, not a huge amount really happens. Where the story excels is in the writing, the acting, and the directing, which manages to convey a story that is genuinely quite unsettling. The gang are tending to the Doctor when they realise the TARDIS itself is acting a bit odd as well. Come on, TARDIS, you're taking the piss now. What is this, fucking professional football? Come on. Ian takes an now unconscious Susan into the most uncomfortable looking bedroom I've ever seen in my life. He heads to get some supplies from the old tea machine and goes back to Susan. I'm sure everything will be fine. She's gone. Oh god. Why is she speaking like that? Oh, it is freaky though. It's pretty effective. I can imagine this being quite horrifying in the 60s. It's pretty spooky now. That machine looks like it's up to something. Look at those eyes. With the Doctor now back on his feet, tensions are beginning to run pretty high. They all just want to figure out what's going on, but accusations are beginning to be thrown around. Meanwhile, the exorcism of Susan Foreman is wandering about in her fucking death gown like a right creepy bitch. God, that was like a proper horror movie scene there with her going past in the background. This is fucking Insidious. Jesus Christ. She's very good in this episode, Caroline Ford. She feels genuinely threatening. Susan pulls out the scissors and is almost about to attack Barbara, but she manages to wrestle the scissors from her. Susan just rambles about shadows and silence on the ship. Not yet, love. The whole gang reconvene in the console room, and when the Doctor tries to open the TARDIS doors, something roars from outside. Oh, I just want to know what's happening. It's a fucking bear. It's a grizzly. More accusations get thrown around, with the Doctor accusing Ian and Barbara of being the reason things are going wrong.
You're the cause of this disaster, and you're both nuts. You're not both Susan and I are unconscious.
Nice. Good delivery. Barbara claps back by saying how great they've been in the previous adventures, and that the Doctor is just a crusty old fuckknuckle who wouldn't know his arse from his elbow, which I'm paraphrasing. Things screech to a chilling halt when Barbara sees the clock, and I'll admit, I'm still not really sure what we're supposed to be looking at here. Clock. Scary clock. What's happening? In the hullabaloo, the Doctor has excused himself from the room, returning with a tray of totally innocent drinks for everyone to share. He just comes out naked. I've decided. Doctor, please, don't drink it. Could be piss for all we know. His head's fucked up. They all have their drinks and retire to their beds, where the Doctor skulks around and checks they're all fast asleep. He returns to the console to examine it, when suddenly a pair of hands close around his neck. I mean, I'm assuming there's a person attached to them, not just floating disembodied hands. Anyway, part 2. So he got throttled in the cliffhanger of last week's episode. But who was the throttler? I know it wasn't... What's his name? Oh, it was his name. He was the one person I knew it wasn't going to be. I'm awful at this. The Doctor has a brief struggle with Ian before Ian faints and Barbara rushes in to help. This obviously leads to more accusations being cast, with the Doctor adamant that they've somehow sabotaged the ship. Susan appears like a goddamn demon out of nowhere. Oh god, she's terrifying in this episode. It's like fucking E.T. Just as the Doctor is threatening to throw the humans off the ship, an alarm blares from the fault locator, I think, telling them that every system on the ship is failing. With the threat of certain death, everyone decides to set aside their differences and work together. This is where I found things got a little bit muddled. The Doctor discovers that the fast return switch in the TARDIS console has been stuck on this whole time, sending the TARDIS back to the start of a solar system and nearing its own destruction. So the switch was pressed down, and that made them fast return all the time, or at least glitch the TARDIS out. But then they also crashed into a solar system that was just born, which expelled the TARDIS's energy, and the TARDIS was warning them about that. So they wanted to murder everyone. I don't know. The TARDIS has been trying to warn them of its destruction by, and I'm still a little cloudy on this, expelling its own power source from beneath the console, and for some reason making them want to murder each other, I think. Anyway, the Doctor fixes the switch and everything returns to normal. Apologies are made and the gang come through the other end a lot more trusting and closer together. And that is where we leave the Edge of Destruction. To me, this story is a prime example of something that I've always loved about the creativity of Doctor Who and those responsible for making it. In a lot of other shows, an episode like this could be quite a big risk to take, but the fact that so early in the game, the team behind the show are willing to try something bold and original, and so different to what the audience had come to expect by that point, just makes me respect them even more. I have my issues with the story. I find the solution to be a little rushed and confusing, but it's not like I was expecting any concrete signs. It's Doctor Who, for God's sake. With how alien and disturbing the characters are acting, especially Susan, I sort of expected it to be more of a possession story, which led to the actual solution feeling a little bit anticlimactic. But the positives of this episode hugely outweigh any issues I have with it. With the delivery of such an engaging, suspenseful, downright scary episode, it uses psychological horror and plays with ideas in such a great way that we don't even need to see any real threat. We get it all from the actors' performances and the directing. Having a horror like this set on the TARDIS itself, a place where we're supposed to feel safe and magical, makes it all the more effective. And this episode sees the first development of the TARDIS having a mind of its own, and being a living thing beyond the machine we know it as so far. The Edge of Destruction was a risky, experimental story that, despite having a few issues, definitely pays off. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Oh my god. Well, it's a shame the episode's missing, so we'll never find out what that was about.